What's up, everybody? It's George Gabriel, and I want to help you make it in music. And in this series, Making It in Music, I'm going to share how I got my first scoring gig, which was Baywatch, starting in 5 seconds. So in a past video of Making It in Music, I shared how I made my first demo reel that landed me the Baywatch gig. Now, my first demo reel was a little lackluster and kind of unconventional, but what it did do is gave me the opportunity to do sound design for Baywatch Hawaii. And in that meeting, I was able to get the opportunity to actually have my first scoring gig. So how did that story unfold? If you watch the video on how I made my first demo on a CD, I sent all those CDs out with a few contacts that I had. In fact, the first contact that I had that actually took a meeting with me was this guy, Bob Marlette. Now, Bob Marlette was like a heavy metal producer, and I was like, cool, I can't wait to meet this guy. Went to his studio, we were talking heavy metal, we were talking like what he was working on, and he really liked my demo because it was unique. Truth be told, he really didn't have any work for a composer. It was more like he was doing producing and stuff like that. But he's like, you know, you should really talk to these guys, Cory and John. So I'm like, okay. And he gave me their information. So I went ahead and sent them one of my demo CDs. I actually got a typed letter back from them saying, nice to meet you, let's talk. Now, these guys had done all the Baywatch episodes, and Baywatch had kind of evolved like Baywatch Nights and Baywatch this and Baywatch that. And now it was like, we're doing Baywatch Hawaii. But what they needed was a playable conch shell for the theme. You know, the boo. And never say no when someone asks you, can you do that? I'm like, oh yeah, sure, I can do that. I'll come down, I'll make you a playable conch shell. So I show up to their studio with my Akai sampler under my hand, a shop vac vacuum tube, and probably like what was an SMPTE, the only microphone I can afford at the time. And I'm like, yeah, let's go to work. So they're like, yeah, we want a playable conch shell. And they kind of showed me the theme, and I was just like, wow, this is cool. I'm like, yeah, let me do that. Literally, I went into one of their rooms and I set up my sampler and I set up my microphone going to the sampler, and I proceeded to blow into this giant vacuum hose, which was a shop vac. Lord knows what was in my lungs from that session. But I was like, back then, it was a lot harder to sampler because you're doing it on this little machine. You're like, okay, get the in points, get the out points, and you had to deal with this little software that was in the machine and a little tiny window that was like this big. At the end of it all, I actually came up with 3 different sounds. I'm going to show them to you right now in Logic. I still have the original sounds. Now, back then, we were just firing everything from samplers. They had walls of samplers. They had Akai samplers. They had the Roland 760s. They had it all going into this crazy like multi-mix thing. But what Logic had done was they had made this program called EXS, which is now the multi-sampler. And I was able to convert all the old Akai samples that I had into this EXS format. So let me dial up the original things that I did. Now you'll note I have a whole thing of sound design, and each one of these has its own story to it. I put it in world, it's not my sound design, but if I go to it, it's Conch's. So I did low 2, medium 1, and medium 3. So let's hear what low sounds like. Now you add some reverb to this, and all of a sudden it sounds pretty cool. And then if you do a little pitch bend. Now you could also loop these things, and I don't think I even did that. But let's see what the next one was. Let's see what medium 1 sounds like. Yeah, that was like literally me blowing into a vacuum tube. And they actually had that little fall off, which so when you're like, but I think the one that was the real big one was this one, medium 3. That's it. So in that, they're like, wow, this is really cool. You wouldn't want to have them to score the show, would you? Now, these guys had like 2 ABC shows. They had Baywatch, and they had already scored a ton of Baywatch. And they're like, we need to offload this show. We're too busy with our ABC shows, and maybe this guy can do it. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I can do that. Never say no. Now, back in that day, it wasn't just like, yeah, just download the video. No, this is what we used, the old VHS tape. So they sent me off with a VHS tape. And back then, some of you people who have done this a long time will corroborate my story. We had to use VHS tapes, and we had to use a VCR that had a shuttle wheel on it. And worse yet, you had to have a 4-head VCR because you had to stripe the VHS with SMPTE timecode, which was this horrifying sound. It was like, And we would have these things called uniters, and the uniter would be able to read that sound and tell your sequencer, hey, you're at 1 hour, 3 minutes, 22 seconds, and 15 frames. And then to score, you had to like rewind every scene and wait for that thing to catch up. It was kind of a nightmare, but I took that videotape home and I scored the first scene of this episode that they gave me. And then back then, I actually had to bring my computer down because my computer had it all lined up and dial into all their stuff to actually play the track. So I don't know exactly which demo landed me that gig, but I did find some Baywatch tunes that actually used those 3 playable conch shells that I created when I went there that one day with a sampler under my arm. I'm going to play them for you just so you can hear how they were used in the score and really created that custom like Hawaiian conch shell sound. Yeah. So, just using that little mod wheel. Some other stuff. Yeah, just that. I can hear the medium 1 being used as kind of like a high fluty kind of sound. Let's see what else we got. Yeah. Just kind of doing that mod wheel. Kind of cool how you can use something like that that was literally a vacuum tube and make it a sound of a show. So that was medium 1 there. By itself could work, but it kind of does work pretty well up here. There's both medium 1 and medium 3. Medium 1 doing that. That low one was really good for literally when you're trying to do something like huge. So what are the takeaways of this? The takeaways are you got to put yourself out there in a demo format, even if it's stuff that you did a long time ago, but it sounds unique. One of the things that I think got interest in me is that I wasn't doing the same stuff everybody else was doing. I literally didn't have the money to get the good sounds. So I was like creating stuff with a sampler and just finding household objects and basically sampling lots of the cymbals and stuff like that on the Baywatch. But nobody else had that sample. It was my sample. There's this one thing that I had called Distorted Coolness. And it was from an old 4-track session with a friend. He did this crazy guitar thing and it sounded great, and I use it all over Baywatch. I actually use it all over all sorts of stuff. Be inventive, be creative, show up to the party ready to rock and roll with whatever it is that somebody's asking you to do. And who knows, it might be the thing that just starts your career and takes you to a whole nother level. Overall, the point of these videos and me sharing these stories is because I want to help you be successful. I want to share my stories so you can put your own stories to work and maybe take some tips out of the things that I've learned or that I've experienced and pull from them and say, hey, I can do this too. But there's lots more stories to share. And I'm looking forward to doing that with you to hopefully inspire you into different ways to go for your career in music. So what do you think of this video? If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button, click the bell icon to be notified of future videos, and follow me on Instagram at GGabrielMusic. Until next time, this is George Gabriel Music.